"You're still sharp, Frank, just not sharp enough." That's what my boss said before sliding the termination papers across the glass conference table. No warning. No performance review. Just a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes and a security guard waiting outside the door. After 27 years with the same company building it from the ground up. Mentoring half the people in that office I was out. Too old. Too slow. Too traditional. Those were the words he used, carefully disguised behind corporate jargon about fresh perspectives. I didn't even argue. What was the point? The world had changed, and men like me were just placeholders until someone younger could do it cheaper. I packed my framed family photo, my fountain pen, and the pocket notebook I'd carried for 2 decades, the one full of strategies, notes, and numbers no one else understood but me, as I walked out. I passed my boss, Adam Reeves' perfect haircut, custom suit. The kind of man who thought confidence was the same thing as experience. "Nothing personal, Frank," he said. "It's just time for new ideas." I looked him dead in the eye. "You'll find out soon enough what time really means." "Adam," he smirked, like I'd just told a bad joke. That night, I sat in my car outside the office for an hour, staring at the building I'd given half my life to. I'd turned that place into a multi-million-dollar firm when Adam was still figuring out how to tie a tie. And now I was the relic collecting dust on the curb. I went home, poured myself a drink, and opened that old notebook. Every page was filled with my plans, contacts, contracts, formulas. But at the very back, something caught my eye. A project proposal I'd written years ago and shelved when management wasn't ready. The numbers were massive. If executed right, it could revolutionize the company's entire logistics division. But the idea wasn't owned by them, it was still mine. I smiled for the first time in months. They'd fired me because I was too old for their future, but they didn't realize I was the one who built it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. That night, I made a decision that would make Adam regret ever underestimating me, and within a week, his company would be calling me, not for advice, but for salvation. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. No alarm, no schedule, no boss breathing down my neck. Just silence, and the kind that's louder than any noise. I sat at the kitchen table with that old notebook open. Coffee steaming beside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking like an employee. I was thinking like the man I used to be. The one who built things from scratch. The project I'd found in the back of the notebook was called Mercury Logistics Algorithm. I'd designed to predict market trends, reroute supply chains, and cut losses before they happened. I'd pitched it 3 times when I still worked at the firm. Every time, Adam shot it down. Too ambitious, he'd said. Too complicated. He didn't mean complicated. He meant he didn't understand it, but I did, and I still had the contacts to bring it to life. By noon, I'd made a few calls to an old friend from MIT who'd gone into software design, a client I'd once saved from bankruptcy, and my former assistant, Rachel, who had quit shortly after I was fired. When I told her what I was doing, she didn't hesitate. "Count me in," she said. "Adam's been running that place into the ground since you left. Everyone knows it." That made me smile. Maybe I wasn't the only one who wanted payback. Over the next few days, my small apartment turned into a war room. Whiteboards covered the walls, laptops hummed non-stop, and sticky notes piled up like chess moves waiting to be played. I worked 15 hours a day running models, testing equations, tweaking the algorithm, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel old. I felt alive. But just as things started to click, an email landed in my inbox. From Adam Reeves, subject: "Friendly advice, Frank. I heard you've been contacting old clients. You know that's a breach of your contract. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Retire gracefully." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. He knew. Then, I smiled. Of course he did. Someone inside the company must have told him. But instead of fear, I felt something else, a spark of satisfaction. Because if Adam was worried enough to send that message, It meant he understood just enough to be scared. He'd fired me for being too old. But what he didn't realize was that I'd spent 3 decades learning every move this business could make, and now I was about to make the one move he'd never see coming. Adam's email didn't scare me. It confirmed something I'd suspected all along. He wasn't confident. He was desperate. You don't threaten a man unless you think he's capable of winning. So I kept building. Every night, while the city slept, I refined the Mercury system, adding features, tightening its predictive code, and testing its accuracy against real-world data. By the end of the week, it was outperforming every major analytics platform in the industry. But I didn't just want to prove Adam wrong. I wanted to prove that experience still mattered. Rachel came by with takeout on Friday night, setting 2 boxes of noodles on the table between us. "You've been at this for 72 hours straight," she said. "You need sleep, Frank." "Sleep is for people with nothing to prove," I muttered, scribbling notes on the whiteboard. She gave me that look, the one she used to give when she was my assistant and I forgot to eat lunch 3 days in a row. "You know, Adam's been pitching investors on something big. Maybe it's connected." I turned toward her. "How do you know that?" "I still talk to a few people there," she said. "Word is, the company's about to sign a contract with a shipping giant. Multi-million-dollar deal." My pen froze in midair. "A logistics contract?" Rachel nodded. "Yep, sounds like something Mercury could have handled in half the time." That was it. The missing piece. Adam was trying to secure the very deal that my project was built for. And without me, he was blind. I leaned back, a slow smile forming. "Rachel, I think it's time we make an appearance." 2 days later, I booked a booth at an upcoming logistics tech expo, the same one Adam's company would be attending. I spent my last savings printing demo materials, renting a small screen, and setting up a basic prototype display. Nothing fancy, just functional. When the doors opened, the room buzzed with energy suits, investors, company banners. Adam's booth stood near the center, polished and expensive, all chrome and smiles. He didn't notice me at first. But when he did, the color drained from his face. "Well," he said, forcing a laugh, "if it isn't the legend himself. Come to see how the new generation does it." "Something like that," I said, keeping my tone light. "Thought I'd show off an idea I've been working on." He raised an eyebrow. "Still tinkering with those old notebooks?" I just smiled. "You'll see." When my turn came to present, the audience was small, maybe 20 people. But halfway through my demo, the crowd doubled, then tripled. The algorithm predicted distribution routes in real time, adapting instantly to new data. Investors started whispering. Phones came out. Adam stood frozen, jaw tight. He knew exactly what he was watching: his company's lost future. As the presentation ended, one man from the back of the crowd stepped forward, his badge gleaming with the logo of the very shipping giant Adam had been courting. "Mr. Harper," he said, extending his hand, "we need to talk about Mercury." And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Adam had fired me for being too old. But now, he was about to find out how dangerous old experience can be when you give it a reason to fight back. The man's name was David Langford, Senior Procurement Director for Maritime Global Shipping, one of the largest logistics companies in the world. He pulled me aside after the presentation, away from the noise of the expo. His tone was calm, professional, but I could tell he was intrigued. "Your system Mercury, how fast can it scale?" "Depends," I said, trying to sound steady, even though my heart was pounding. "How much are you looking to move?" He smiled faintly. "Try $12 billion in annual freight operations." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Rachel squeezed my arm under the table, reminding me to stay cool. I took a slow sip of water and said, "Then you'll need a partner who actually understands the system, not just a salesman in an expensive suit." He chuckled. "I assume that was a jab at Reeves Tech." "I'm not naming names," I said, "but let's just say the people running that company think experience is a liability." Mercury was rejected because the man in charge couldn't see past his own ego. Langford nodded slowly. "Interesting. He handed me a card. Come by our office Monday. We're evaluating tech solutions for a major deal. Reeves Tech is already on the list, but I'm open to being persuaded. That word persuaded was the spark I'd been waiting for. The rest of the weekend was a blur. Rachel and I worked non-stop, preparing data sheets, refining visuals, updating the demo. I hardly slept. My old apartment looked like a command center again. But then, late Sunday night, an email appeared in my inbox. From Adam Reeves, subject. You're making a mistake, Frank. I know about your meeting with Langford. You're in way over your head. Walk away before you embarrass yourself. I almost laughed out loud. He was worried that meant I was close. When Monday came, I walked into Maritime Global's glass tower like I belonged there. Langford was waiting in the boardroom with 4 other executives. They listened, asked sharp questions, tested me on every metric. I showed them Mercury in action, how it could cut shipping delays, reduce costs, and predict market bottlenecks weeks in advance. Then, midway through the meeting, the door opened. Adam Reeves walked in. For a moment, the room went still. He looked at me, then at Langford. Mr. Langford, he said smoothly, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. My company developed the Mercury framework years ago. Mr. Harper here must have borrowed it. My pulse spiked, but I kept my face calm. Langford turned to me. Is that true? I met his gaze. No, sir. Reeves Tech rejected the design. I built it long before he took over. But if Mr. Reeves wants to make this personal, we can let the results speak for themselves. Adam's smirk faltered. Langford leaned back, thoughtful. All right, gentlemen. We'll do a live tester system versus his, 1 week from today. Adam's confidence cracked just enough for me to see it. Fair enough, I said quietly. Just don't blame me when your boss loses twice in the same lifetime. As I left the room, my phone buzzed with a new message from Rachel. Frank, check the news. Reeves Tech stock is already dropping. I smiled. The game wasn't over yet, but this time, I wasn't playing defense. The week leading up to the test felt like standing on the edge of a storm. Every hour was a blur of coding, tweaking, and rerunning data. Rachel barely left my apartment, living on caffeine and takeout. I hadn't felt this alive or this terrified in years. Reeves Tech had 100 employees and millions in resources. I had a borrowed laptop, 2 whiteboards, and a point to prove. On the morning of the test, Maritime Global's boardroom buzzed like a war zone. Investors, analysts, and media filled every seat. 2 identical systems, one labeled Reeves Tech AI. The other Mercury were connected to a live data feed. Langford stood between us, his expression neutral. Gentlemen, the challenge is simple. We'll simulate a global shipping crisis, delayed ports, fuel shortages, weather disruptions. Whoever predicts the most cost-effective reroute within 2 hours wins the contract. Adam smirked. Try not to crash your system, old man. I smiled back. Don't worry. It's been through worse. The test began. Data poured onto the screen's waves of numbers, graphs, shifting variables. Adam's team huddled together, barking orders, fingers flying across keyboards. Meanwhile, I sat back, hands folded, letting Mercury work. The algorithm was learning on its own now, adjusting, calculating, listening. After an hour, the first results appeared. Reeves Tech's model flagged 8 potential solutions. Mercury found 40-7. By the 90-minute mark, the difference was impossible to ignore. My system not only predicted delays but anticipated secondary consequences with ripple effects, trade zone bottlenecks, even human resource shortages 2 weeks ahead. Langford raised an eyebrow. Impressive. Adam's face turned pale. He started typing furiously, trying to override his system, but the data refused to comply. Something's wrong, one of his engineers muttered. The inputs aren't syncing. I leaned forward. Your system's still using predictive baselines from last quarter. You never updated your feedback loop. Adam shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. 2 hours later, Langford made it official. The contract goes to Mercury Technologies. Applause filled the room. Adam didn't move. He just stood there, rigid, jaw tight as I shook Langford's hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Harper," Langford said. "We'll start with a $12 million rollout." 12 million, a number big enough to change everything. As I turned to leave, Adam muttered, "You'll regret this, Frank." I stopped at the door and looked back. "You already do." Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But in that noise, I felt something quiet and certain. Justice. A week later, Reeves Tech went public with internal restructuring. Adam resigned. The company stock crashed 40%. And me, I moved Mercury into its own officer, small space overlooking the city. Rachel became my partner. On our first morning there, I set my old notebook on the desk, the one that had started it all. Its corners were worn, its pages filled with scribbles and dreams. Rachel looked at me. "So what's next?" I smiled. "Now, we build something that doesn't forget the people who made it possible." She laughed. "Think Adam will ever call again?" I shrugged. "He already did." She blinked. "What?" I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was an unread email from Adam Reeves. Subject: Partnership Proposal. I chuckled and turned it face down. "Too old, huh?" Before I could say another word, Mercury's startup screen glowed softly on the monitor, its first line of code. Scrolling across in bright green letters, "Greater than experience detected, optimizing for wisdom." If this story inspired you or made you smile, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that age is never a weakness. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove some people aren't past their prime. They're just waiting for the right moment to begin again.